do want to thank everyone for being here. My name is Michael Dravenstadt. I'm chair of the board of the D&L National Heritage Corridor. And again, I'd like to welcome everyone to our interactive town hall tonight, where we're going to talk about the gap between Northampton and Catasauqua and how that's part of the Lehigh Valley Gap that we're looking to close. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we begin. We ask all participants to stay on mute. You are going to be on mute, which limits your ability to speak up, of course, but if you do have a question, we ask that you put your question in the chat box to the right, or if you're compelled to raise your hand to be unmuted. That chat box is probably a better way considering how many people we have on the call today. We will have a question and answer session at the end that we will address questions that are posed to us, and feel free to have your video on or off during the session here. Again, tonight's town hall focuses on the long-awaited construction along the D&L Trail's Lehigh Valley Gap. And if we can move on to the next slide here. Just to give you a little bit more information about what we do at the D&L, a lot of people know us for the D&L Trail, which is a really important part of what we do, but we're really a lot more than that. We do run the National Canal Museum in Easton. We have educational programming that reaches more than 10,000 people a year up and down the entire corridor from Wilkes-Barre all the way down to Bristol. And we have a lot of things that we look to do as an organization, everything from industrial heritage to health and wellness, economic development, and nature and the environment. And all that manifests in our work that we do with the D&L Trail. And a lot of people, I think, on the call today can appreciate the D&L from a recreational and tourism aspect, and I think that's really important. But as we look to connect through the Lehigh Valley, we really have an opportunity to do more. It's an opportunity for us to add to the region's transportation infrastructure by providing an alternative to roads, or for an alternative to people that don't have cars or don't wish to use cars. It's an opportunity to add to the region's healthcare infrastructure and provide safe places to get exercise that can reduce chronic illness like diabetes and heart disease. And it's an opportunity to add social infrastructure and give people a safe place to congregate and get together with the communities and the diverse populations that we have in the valley. And the D&L Trail can do all this, and that's part of our mission. And this gap that we're talking about here in the Lehigh Valley and this particular section, this goes through one of the most populous areas of our entire corridor. And to me, it's the place where we have the opportunity to do the most good. And that's what excites me the most, and all the other members of the board and the staff and all of our partners. And I hope that enthusiasm extends to everyone on this call. We're also going to take some time today to highlight the important partnerships that play a role in connecting some of the most complex connections that we've undertaken with the entire D&L Trail. And together as partners, we're going to be designing and building a public asset that will definitely serve all members of the public. The first projects that are ready for construction that we're going to talk about today are situated in the northeast quadrant of the gap in the boroughs of Northampton, North Catasauqua, and Catasauqua. Our team today is going to lead you through the projects in this section and some of the complexities that we face as we look to get it done. Now, I've been on an in-person tour of this, and I was surprised at some of the complexities that are there and some of the challenges that we're going to get done for you and get done for the public. And I'm excited to share those with you today with the team that we have. So again, thank you for being here today. I'm going to pass it now to our Executive Director, Elisa Garofalo, to continue with our program.
Thanks, Mike. So to get us started, first it's most important to present the organization. We are a National Heritage Corridor. We were the third established in these United States. Our history is considered nationally significant, not just important, because of what happened here in the 1800s with the mining and tapping of natural resources to help the industries of the Lehigh Valley and then build Philadelphia. And it is this 165-mile trail that follows through our 5 counties that follows the path of that heritage and tells that story along the way. But it's important, you know, as our funding comes from state, local, federal government, private sources, and we deal in economic development, nature and the environment, health and wellness, our industrial heritage. But it's important to recognize that as we do this, we still have the challenges in closing these remaining gaps. What you see on the map to the right, in green are the construction projects that are ready to go. And then you also see where the trail has been connected. So if we could go to the next slide. If you could go to, thank you. Tonight, we're really excited to have a slate of speakers. We just heard from Mike Drabenstadt, who's a businessman and has been our board chair and just is so passionate about closing the Lehigh Valley Gap. Becky Bradley will be addressing the group, and she heads up the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, and also Brian Cope from Northampton County, and Rick Mulchaney, Director of General Services for Lehigh County, and Pete Payon, who is really has his feet on the ground and is very central to the projects that we have at hand now. So these are not only regionally important to the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, but we have all been working together to, you know, to have for a process and a timeline to fully connect the gap that is left from Allentown North to the Catasauquas and Northampton. But tonight, hopefully, you're going to find out how you too can help, and it helps us to know what your questions and what kind of input you still need. If you would please move on. We have about, right now, we had about 70 folks who registered for this evening, and we have about 50 that are actually on now, plus we are on live on Facebook. So I want to thank all the folks that are here who are taking time from their busy schedule to participate and to listen in. We have folks from 25 different zip codes, 3 different states, and 20 different cities participating. We have a number of people that are joining us from across the region and even other states. Why? Because they're residents, trail users, and they're visitors who are anxious for the through trip along the D&L Trail. So we will be focusing tonight on the closing of the gaps. On the third slide, as we were coming in, you saw that there are many projects that are already in progress in various phases. And these are located in 4 of our 5 counties. There's only one county, Carbon County, that is fully connected their route, and that was completed last year with the opening of the Mansion House Bridge. That bridge was 25 years in the making. So these are not easy projects. There are 2 major physical gaps remaining. One is a 7-mile gap in the Lehigh Valley between Allentown and Northampton, but this has the potential to be a 14-mile loop if we're able to build on both the railroad side and the canal side. In addition, there is another 16 miles to be completed north of Mountaintop into the city of Wilkes-Barre. And we have a whole, partnership and partners that we are working with to close that gap. In Bucks County, to our south, there is just one short section of trail left at Bridge Street in Morrisville to create a short detour to be able to complete the route all the way through Delaware Canal State Park. And then there's less than a mile in the borough of Bristol that simply needs to be improved. And then we can say that, we are complete. So we right now have about 140 of our 165 miles built, but they aren't all connected. And why is this important? When we're done, we'll have the longest trail in the state of Pennsylvania. We will have a nationally significant story of innovation and industry and of the people who have lived and built this wonderful area. And it also, points to, some of the things that happened here, they're nationally significant, and as we have found out recently, some of it's not as great a history maybe as we might like. The walking purchase, where there was, our Native Americans were overtaken, by a rather, industrious white folks to gather more land. Discriminatory hiring practices that took place in Bethlehem, and other questionable business practices that took place in our mines. The Molly Maguires, there have been movies made about this. But for the last year and a half, it's important for me to point out that as an organization, myself and the leadership of the board has been actively involved in diversity, equity, and inclusion practices and groups that we are involved with individuals and organizations, with the United Way and elsewhere, and even with working with our staff and board themselves. So this involves our staff, our board, involves a whole variety of training as well. And the next slide shows, trails mean business. And that is, through the years we have said this. And I think, in recent months and years, this is becoming more and more the case. We see what's happened in Philadelphia with the circuit trails, in Oregon and Chicago and other places where recreational activity is creating jobs and economic impact. And the amount of money that, $795 million are spent on outdoor recreation each year in our own Lehigh Valley. The Pennsylvania outdoor recreation economy generates $29 billion in consumer spending, which translates into $1.9 billion in taxes. We've also done studies of 3 separate times where we have looked at the impact that the economy has what impact our activities have had on the economy. And we can look, how that's grown to some $474 million in economic impact through the years. The Lehigh Valley return on environment, points to the 58.9 million in taxes and 9,600 jobs that have been created. And these are jobs, the jobs that from outdoor recreation and service jobs, these cannot be readily outsourced. These are places that are small businesses, bike shops, restaurants, coffee shops, outdoor education, outfitters and environmental education. So as we move on to the next slide, thank you. We are really looking with this gap in particular, this Lehigh Valley Gap between Allentown and Northampton. We are really looking at equitable access for all, because consistently what we have found, the places that are not built, these are the neighborhoods with higher rates of poverty and more racial diversity, and they have less access to this D&L Trail that so many of us enjoy and have used. We did a study in 2018 that showed that only 3% of our trail users were Black and 10% were Hispanic. When you compare that with a 6.25 and 11.9 comparable population in the region. Now, I know during COVID, we have seen visibly, we have seen changes. We see more diversity and ethnicity and a variety of uses out there. I see it myself personally on my local trails and on the D&L. Moving on, the data from our Get Your Tail on the Trail program with St. Luke's, which is one of our key partners in addressing health and having a healthier population, it shows that people burn a higher average number of calories per activity on the D&L Trail than compared to activities that folks are doing in same amount of time at gyms and in their homes and in their communities. You went a little too quick there. A little back, thank you. So the D&L Trail and other trails, that are part of the LINK Lehigh Valley Trail Network are a critical part of this health infrastructure, because each year over 200 million calories are burned on the trail. And what we see that the number of work days lost due to sickness and mental health are reduced amongst trail users. And sadly, way up north, we have seen the opposite happening, where the trail does not exist, with Geisinger's Community Health Needs Assessment, where they went from being number 28 of 67 counties in 2014 to number 37 of 67 counties in 2017, because they see a falling health status due to age and less access to trails. So on to the next slide, please. So what we are talking about primarily tonight are the physical gaps that remain. And these are all river towns, as are listed on the slide: Copley, Hackendaqua, Catasauqua, Northampton, and downtown Allentown. These are the main gaps that we have left. And as I mentioned earlier, these are our poorest and most diverse neighborhoods that are left. And when we realized this last year, as we were getting into our diversity DEI initiatives, it's alarming to us. It's embarrassing that this is where we have what we have left. And so it's very important to us to make these these community connections to the river, to the natural areas, and to the trails. So 57.5% of the D&L Trail is located within 100 feet of a waterway, and predominantly the Lehigh and the Delaware canals. And the trail connects communities for transportation, health, the economy, as well as culture. And so it's my pleasure now to introduce Becky Bradley. And Becky is the very talented director of the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. And in the last couple of years, we worked very closely on an active transportation plan that was recently adopted for the Lehigh Valley. And the Walk, Roll initiatives, and she's also, the Planning Commission is an integral partner in the LINK Lehigh Valley Trail Network. So with that, I'd like to introduce the next slide and introduce Becky Bradley.
Thank you very much, Elisa, for inviting me to be part of this this evening. I just want to check that you can hear me.
Yep.
Excellent, thank you. As you can see on the slide, is part of the region's plan, which is Future LV, the official plan for Northampton and Lehigh counties, as well as the Lehigh Valley Transportation Study, which is a transportation planning and investment entity in the Lehigh Valley. We adopted a single plan last year. The Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor is actually at the center of that plan. There are opportunities on both sides of the river, especially in the 7 Mile Gap area. The slide here, which we actually included in the plan because it's that important to our region, is the image that you see there is on what would be on the western side, or what we all affectionately call the Riverside Drive portion of it. Which extends again roughly from Allentown up through Whitehall and then over into the Catasauqua, North Catasauqua, Northampton area. So this would actually provide a potential boom in the economy. And I know Elisa wanted me to talk a little bit about that. But what the regional plan does first and foremost is it sets the policy direction as well as the vision for the Lehigh Valley. One of the things that the community as a whole, the business community, citizens, partners, elected officials, municipal appointed officials had told us through the planning process for the new regional plan was that we had to have some alternatives for getting people out of their cars. We all recognize the importance of vehicles and the role that they play in our lives, but people also wanted healthier lifestyles. They also wanted new ways around congested roadways. And the D&L really serves that through our region. So then closing this 7-mile gap becomes a huge priority then for the region as a whole. And one that the Lehigh Valley Transportation Study felt so strongly about that they even allocated funding resources to it come October 1 of this year. So in the next slide, what I wanted to show you is what I affectionately call the planner map, which kind of outlines how important this section of the D&L is to our entire region. It really is at the heart of our community and provides an opportunity to connect the bus rapid transit corridor along Hamilton Street in Allentown, all the way up through Route 22. And that segment of Route 22 between MacArthur Road and really Shainersville Road is the most congested roadway and takes more vehicles than any other segment of road in the Lehigh Valley. That includes cars on 78. And that's an interstate highway, not even a state highway like 22. And then north of 22, then up through Whitehall. And then again, the trail would go on either side, creating this wonderful loop opportunity that Elisa had explained earlier. But kind of building off of what Lisa said and why this is so very important, she had noted that in the Lehigh Valley Return on Environment, that there are already 9,678 jobs supported by outdoor recreation. Just the estimate, in a very conservative estimate, of the economic impact of closing this major gap in the system could potentially add another 2,900 jobs in outdoor recreation, meaning that would be 12,578 jobs, if my math is correct, which would make outdoor recreation, if it was a single employer, the 6th largest employer in the Lehigh Valley, having more employees than PPL Corporation. So just the economic impact of the job creation alone and the businesses that this gap closure could support as it relates to the region as a whole is huge. Additionally, the project, this gap closure, could add another $100 million of economic impact in this Riverside Drive segment. That would make the total economic impact to outdoor recreation in the Lehigh Valley $895 million, which is close to $1 billion impact. So you can see why the region wanted to prioritize this and why then now people are making investments, building new partnerships like the Link Trail system, engaging in these types of forums to try to get the message out and to try to help support closure of the trail gap. But then also our second piece of that is helping to support the communities around the trail and then the new businesses and existing businesses that come along with it. I have to tell you, over the weekend, I rode 18 miles with my husband of the D&L from the Lehigh Valley into the Jim Thorpe area. And the amount of people when we got to Jim Thorpe, not from Pennsylvania at all, New York, New Jersey plates, other places. There's even a diplomat plate in the parking lot at Jim Thorpe near the train station, was incredible. If we could leverage that along the entire length of the corridor, especially in the Lehigh Valley with all the existing assets we have between Easton, Bethlehem, Allentown, Slatington area, the Walnut Point area, and so on and so forth, as it would be absolutely remarkable for not just our economy, but the Commonwealth's economy. And I'll just end on this one other point. Elisa is absolutely right. that this trail has national significance. It was founded for being nationally significant, but it's additionally significant because it's also part of the 9/11 Memorial Trail. So we have a historic and now a modern reason to celebrate the D&L in the Lehigh Valley. Thank you.
Thanks, Becky. Thank you for pointing out the 9/11 Memorial Trail, because this gap is part of the gap on the 9/11 Memorial, and I myself and our board member Andy Hamilton are active with that project. So what you're seeing on this slide is sort of it's the nuts and bolts. Essentially, in order to close the Lehigh Valley Gap, it's in 4 phases, and you will see them in 4 different colors: the green, the blue, the purple, and the orange. And but you know, while it's 4 phases, it's actually 10 different projects in order for us to get to close these different phases. And but today we're going to be focusing on the shovel-ready section in Northampton and North Catasauqua that Pete Payon is going to discuss in more detail. And so I want to introduce Pete. He is North Catasauqua's Borough Council President, but as I just recently learned, he is also a D&L Trail commuter. He uses his bike and the trail to commute to work. So I want to introduce now Pete Payon. Are you there, Pete?
Yep, now I am. Thanks, Alyssa. Thanks so much for that kind introduction. I did just start commuting not too long ago. I have an office in Northampton, and I do live in Catasauqua, so it's a little tough with some of the gaps that we have in the trail, but I've been managing so far. On behalf of North Catasauqua, we've actually been quite happy to partner with the D&L and with Northampton Borough in trying to close the trail gap in our area. I don't think I saw Leroy, the borough manager from Northampton, on the call, but I really can't say enough about our partnership with Northampton Borough. I joked with him the other day that I aspire to be Leroy, and I'm quite happy to be working with him. We've had an intermunicipal agreement with Northampton Borough for several years, mainly in the effort to try and move this project and several other projects forward. North Catasauqua is a bedroom community. We have very few businesses. We have a few restaurants. We are primarily a residential community. So very strong connections to the communities around us are essential for us to maintain a high quality of life for our residents and for us to maintain a community that really does attract new residents to our borough. When you look at the data from Becky and from the LVPC, you see that we actually have one of the highest percentages of zero vehicle households in the valley, especially in a corridor along Front Street that we share with the borough of Catasauqua. This means that alternative transit options are really essential for many of our residents on a day-to-day basis. So towards that end, we view the D&L and hopefully an expanded link network as vital to our well-being as a community. And we are really trying to work as hard as we can towards being a trail-friendly town. So you can see on this slide the images from North Catasauqua and Northampton, and on this new slide, you can see a project map that we have taking place. In order to improve our community's access to the trail, we have worked down several different paths. Our council is currently advertising for a trail connectivity study in our borough to further connect our citizenry within the link network. We've also aggressively worked on engineering and planning, and you can see the results of that on this slide with some of the engineering work that was completed in 2018. We often work hand in hand in partnership with the D&L towards these efforts and towards closing the gap, as well as improving our trailhead within North Catasauqua. With the D&L, we've already progressed through engineering of the trail from the border of our borough with Catasauqua and Lehigh County, well into Northampton Borough and at Dry Run. We further relied on all of this engineering work to actually proceed with getting the environmental permits necessary for the project to start. I'm actually quite happy to say that these efforts have paid off. Back in June, we received word that we've received the environmental permits necessary to proceed with the project. So really, in essence, the project to close the gap in North Catasauqua and the borough of Northampton is about as shovel-ready as one can find anywhere. If we look at the next slide, you'll see the before and after of Dry Run Bridge. So now that we have that nice bridge, we'd like to continue the project well into our borough. We are hoping that through the support of our county and state governments, that we'll be able to bring to life the plans that we've developed over the past several years. Over the past 2 years, we've worked pretty aggressively to apply for nearly any state and any county grant that we could consider to obtain the funds to fill this gap. I'm sure that at some point, both Representative Mako and Senator Boscola and their staffs will tire from hearing me. And I do have to really thank them for all of their support through this process. They've really been very helpful. I'm also, I've been extremely happy to announce that at a recent council meeting, that Northampton County has given us quite a huge boost towards filling our funding gap to close our trail gap with a generous livable landscapes grant of $500,000. And I really do have to thank Lamont McClure, our county executive, all of our county council members, and Brian Cope and Sherry Acevedo for all of their helps in obtaining that. And now it's up to us to work to secure the balance of that funding, to see if we can further these efforts and close the gap. With that, I'll actually turn it over to Brian Cope, as I like to refer to him, the grand poobah of all things parks and recreation within North.
Well, thanks, Pete. I don't know if I'm the grand poobah, but that's a heck of an introduction. I just want to say thanks to the D&L, Lisa, and the Planning Commission with Becky, putting this together and getting us the data that we can have to have these talks about everything going on in the Lehigh Valley, Northampton County, Northampton and North Caddy, and specifically along the D&L section that we're here today to speak about. That's actually not my slide.
Yeah, could you go back one, please? That one, yes, there you go.
I want to talk about a couple different things, some bullet points. As you can see, Northampton County is riddled with preserved open space, and we have over 300 miles of land and water trails. Northampton County is really a hub of the East Coast, 4 major trails connecting through our area. We have 4 trails that are over 150 miles each that connect within the county itself. The Appalachian Trail, the September 11th National Memorial Trail. We have the Liberty Water Gap Trail, and as we all know, the D&L Trail. So these connections, as we're talking about this 7-mile or 2-mile stretch of D&L, opens up opportunities to travel the East Coast on biking or hiking. You can go Maine to Georgia. You can go Allentown to New York, Allentown to Philadelphia, to Wilkes-Barre, so on and so forth. So this gap that we're talking about today is critical, not just for the county, for the Lehigh Valley itself, but to open up miles and miles and miles of trails for economic development, for tourism, that will help boost our economy. And you've seen the slides that show the job creation, that show the taxes, that show how much direct economic input or impact is placed when we look at these things. One of the best slides, or one of the best things that I've noticed through Outdoor Industries Association economic impact study that they did back in 2017 was that 134 million people annually attend a pro sport event. So football, basketball, baseball, hockey. Annually, more people go outdoors and recreate and spend money on those types of things than they do at pro sports. And that's before COVID hit. So now with everything locked down, we're really going to see a larger impact. And I know I have, and I'm sure you have seen that our parks and trails have been overwhelmed, but they've held their capacity to a point. It was really good to see, especially in the early ons, about that. Trails really help our small boroughs. They help our counties. They help everywhere else. But they also provide environmental preservation. The Lehigh River Corridor is one of the most publicly owned rivers in the state. You can have public access through up and down the river itself, and the D&L adds to that. So you can do a kayak and a bike trip. You can go fishing. You can go walking through from your home and take a nice trip along the river. And those are the aspects of the D&L, and closing this type of gap out will help assist everyone within this region, and especially the people that live directly next to it. It also provides opportunities for environmental education, outdoor classrooms. We can use these for birding or hiking, to get schools out on trails. Transportation, busing is always a kind of a hindrance these days. So getting people, outdoor clubs after school, to go look at what we have in our sections here, especially within the section of North Caddy, Northampton, and Catasauqua. And it leads us really back to the community connections, as Pete talked about, as Becky and Elisa and Mike all explained. This is the most populated area of the D&L Trail within its 165 miles. I live probably about 500 feet from the trail. I can't wait until this is actually a developed part of the trail. We go out on hikes right now, we make our own, but to have this as a connection down to downtown Allentown, as a connection to Northampton, so Pete can ride his bike a little bit easier to make it to his job. Those are all the types of things that we're really looking, and we really are hopeful that this last section of the D&L Trail will help boost the economy, help boost economic development, tourism, and just overall quality of life within Northampton County, Lehigh County, and the Lehigh Valley itself. As Pete mentioned, through Executive Lamont McClure's initiatives and County Council's approval last month, Northampton County approved $500,000 worth of funding for this specific section of trail, which will hopefully add to additional grants that I know the D&L has now applied for through state and other grants. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Rick Mulchaney, our Director of General Services with Lehigh County, that's already working on the section just south of where we live in North Caddy, in Catasauqua Borough.
Is Rick on?
Rick is on. I tried to unmute. Rick, do you hear us?
I do. Can you hear me?
There we go.
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Is.
Thank you, Brian, for the intro. Look, I think the further you go in a meeting such as this, all the cool stuff that you wanted to say has already been said. So I don't have anything cool to add, with the exception of, Lehigh County has consistently been a partner for outdoor recreation. Our open space initiatives, our Trexler Nature Preserve, our farmland preservation, our continuing efforts to expand trails throughout the county speak for itself. I think the reality is this area adjacent to Allentown is without doubt critical to the entire Lehigh Valley. We can get caught up talking about Lehigh and Northampton County, or talking about different boroughs, townships, municipalities. The reality is Allentown is the hub of the Lehigh Valley. And this opportunity can create tremendous advantages for economics, as well as our continuing efforts to keep knowledge and talented people living in the Lehigh Valley. Years ago, many generations, my parents migrated from Eastern Europe because the Lehigh Valley had tremendous opportunities. It had natural resources, limestone, and unfortunately, most of the folks who were living here were working in agriculture. So they needed to bring in labor, blue collar, hardworking, future Americans. They brought those people in to work in steel, iron, cement, the keystone of the Keystone State of the United States of America. So there's a lot of history from the 1800s through the 1900s till today. But that economy's changed. And I think where my focus is how do we maintain a census of knowledge and talented people so that we could recruit businesses that are not dependent on natural resources anymore. Brain power and the opportunities to exploit brain power are here in the Lehigh Valley. We have wonderful universities within a stone's throw. So for us, the reality for us is keeping those trained individuals here in the Lehigh Valley. Now, Elisa, Becky, and I think Andy has now heard my joke. People do not move to Lehigh County because we have a wonderful jail. They come to Lehigh County because we have rolling hills and we have farmland in excess of 25,000 acres preserved, and we have numerous trails and parks. I knew Randy when he was young, and his brother, Brian, who's on the call tonight. And I know the Copes were extremely passionate about trails. And I would like to say my son, along with the Copes, were on these trails long before they were even trails. Back then, they were active outdoor recreation seekers. So what keeps knowledge and talented people here? What keeps people here are quality of life initiatives that are sometimes hard to justify to county council or county commissioners or municipal leadership. You've heard some statistics today. We are doing a much better job today at calculating the impact of outdoor recreation than we ever have. At the same time, our housing prices continue to rise. The appraisal values of our houses are solid. Why? Because we have outdoor recreation amenities. It's what makes the Lehigh Valley the Lehigh Valley. So couple the generations ago of natural resources and the need for the keystone with today, the amount of secondary education opportunities for our young people if they stay here by giving us the ability to recruit for businesses that don't require raw materials. So folks, we've evolved. And I think part of our evolution is taking a trail bed that was once carrying the materials to build the United States that maybe isn't as efficient as it once was, and convert that opportunity into something that's extremely important for us, which is quality of life and keeping those knowledge and talented young people living here so that we can recruit business. This is no secret. I want to tell everybody that I can. This is why we invest in trails and open space. Sure, we have the economic benefits. Sure, we have the environmental benefits. But we're doing it for those constituency who are going to call this place home for generations to come. They expect us to do this. Whether you're right or left in your political persuasion, nothing matters more than your family. And families love the trails. We know that. Today, Lehigh County is involved in several projects to close that 7-mile gap that's been referred to earlier. From Race Street south to Hanover Canal, we expect to have that project completed within the next 12 to 18 months. From Race Street north, we continue to evaluate the opportunities, and we can't wait until North Catasauqua has their trail wide open for business so that we can connect into it. On the west side of the Lehigh River, we have a tremendous opportunity that was made available by the Jandal Waterfront Project. They're infusing many millions of dollars into downtown Allentown with a vision of it becoming similar to the San Antonio Riverwalk. If that can happen, and we believe it can, this will become an important component for the D&L Trail, because we will connect Hamilton Street at the Waterfront Project to Ray Street on the western side of the Lehigh River. This will create that looping that I think Elisa mentioned earlier. In addition, we continue to explore our opportunities, and we have made a bid offer to Norfolk Southern for the land on the west side of the Lehigh River from Ray Street north until the Cementon trailhead. And that's extremely important to us. If we can secure that land, that will, as you heard earlier, potentially create 14 miles worth of trail, giving people the ability to loop rather than circle back. And I think that will be a huge advantage to the success of the trail in this very populated area. So we have a lot of work to do. We have partners from Wildlands to Northampton County to the municipalities on both sides of the river, Catasauqua, North Catasauqua, Northampton Borough, as well as Whitehall Township and Allentown. We're positive that our partners will rise with us, and we will get something done that completes this gap, but at the same time can create unbelievable economic opportunity in this 7 or 14 mile corridor like we've never seen before since the age of the Industrial Revolution. So we're motivated. We need to acquire the land, and we need effective plans to help us on the funding. All that is a matter of time, but we're happy to say we're going to construction on the east side of the Lehigh River from Ray Street south to Hanover Canal Park. That's happening right now. So we're partners with Northampton on this, and we believe that it's going to be a tremendous opportunity for economics and quality of life for this particular dense population that encompasses both Lehigh and Northampton County. So I'm excited about it. We have a long way to go, but we have a plan. And I think once you have the plan, now it's a matter of execution. And that's the steps and stages where we're at. So thank you, Elisa. And I think it goes back to you at this point.
It does. Thank you so much, Rick. And I want to thank all of the speakers that presented this evening. It's important for you to know that, you know, as an organization, the Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor, we're committed to this coordination that's required to make this happen. And, you know, and to do more outreach and have the better policies and training when it's needed. We know that this is the right thing to do, you know, to better engage the community and to improve the internal operational and organizational aspects of our project. And, you know, and this involves planning, you know, and funding to close these physical gaps. Applying, you know, the applicant may be the county or the township or the borough, but very often Lauren Golden on our staff is the one who's, you know, working on those grant applications and creating the case for support that's needed to be competitive in going for towards more funding, towards corporate partners. And making these projects shovel ready. So, you know, and as an organization, you know, we have an internal policy, you know, for a more inclusive environment. And we seek out those opportunities for staff and the board and to learn more about these inequities. We've heard about the challenges of this particular area. Homes without cars, lower income, diversity. And we're listening to the communities, and there's going to be more of these community Zoom workshops in the coming month or so. As we build these advocates, I want to ask you, the 50 plus participants, to take action. We will be sending you a post-event survey that we'll ask you to fill out. We'll be asking periodically to send support letters to local legislators for these existing projects and others, as well as support letters to support the Build Grant for the Jandal project for the Allentown waterfront. And also, although COVID has, has made some challenges with volunteering time and talent, but there are those opportunities and the need for your time, your talent, and your treasure to make this a success. Become members, donate, introduce others, share, if you follow us on social media, use the hashtag D&L Trail and share the stories with your stories with us and with other followers. So at this point, and my contact information is up there, and we're easy to get in touch with. But at this point, I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to thank everyone for this tremendous partnership. I mean, I think you can hear, from both counties and municipalities, the Planning Commission, this is what it takes. And we only need more of this in order to, right now, it seems like a lot has been going on behind the scenes, but as you can see, there has been a lot that's gone on the paper, and we're ready. And we have support from our legislators, both sides of the aisle. This is a project that is fully embraceable. So with this, I'm going to turn it over actually to Kelly Federico on our staff, and we will take questions. As you can see to the left, we're talking about that middle section. That's where the northernmost section of the middle section, that's what we've been focusing on. But this is your time, and we will take questions. We're also running this Facebook Live. Kelly, take it away.
Great, thank you, Elisa. Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. If you have a question or comment, please put it in the chat box or raise your hand to be unmuted. If you're joining us via Facebook, please submit your questions there, and we will try to get as many questions as possible. So we do have some questions that were submitted earlier from Eugene Huddle, who lives in Carbon County. If we get shovels in the ground, how soon can we look forward to trail usage in the new area?
So and I'll ask others to chime in, but it's my understanding with the project that Pete and Brian spoke about, that this is something that could go to construction next year, 2021, and possibly completed then. Am I correct?
Well, it's certainly the hope to get some shovels in the ground. And I know that, again, I've been in close contact with Lauren pretty frequently. So I think she might better be able to answer the exact schedule for construction, but we were hoping, with sufficient funding to break ground in the spring. We've actually toured once or twice up and down our section of trail, and there's some work that we think that our borough can, I'll hesitate to say, put forth as a match, but we'd like to get started on some of the activities as defined in the engineering and in the permit in the fall.
I'll just piggyback on what Pete said to reiterate that, yeah, so if the project were fully funded, The bid process takes about 8 weeks. So if we could start that after the new year, we could potentially be going to construction in March or April and then wrapping up by the end of the year.
I saw, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Question from Connie in the chat. If we want to write letters of support of the build grant, to whom do we send them?
Becky, would you like to take that question? Is Becky Bradley still on?
Yes, I am. Took me a minute to unmute myself.
Sorry.
It's all right. You can actually go to buildriversidedrive.com, which is the project website, and see what the plans are for the whole trail. You can look at the actual application, and there's a literal 10-second link there that you can click on and send a letter of support to the U.S. Department of Transportation. They are set to make decisions on build grants by September 15th of this year. So within a few weeks, we will know. So any additional support that you can throw to the project would be enormously helpful. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Becky. Another question we have is, what are some of the big physical obstacles that we need to overcome to connect the gap, especially Catasauqua, the Catasauqua area that we're talking about?
Rick, would you like to take that? Rick Mulchaney? Is Rick still on? Maybe not.
Rick is still
Hello?
listed. There we go.
Oh, there he is. Would you like to take that question?
I can. I said about 3 paragraphs worth of excellent material, and I was muted the entire time. So therefore, let's recap. Obviously, we're very excited to hear the progress in North Catasauqua, and knowing that Northampton County is offering funding to support that area of the trail. That's very critical. And you know, for a long time, we were making our investments on the east side, the Catasauqua side. And I was telling people, we're not making a trail to nowhere. We're making a trail that will connect. And I'm very pleased to hear that there is progress now in North Catasauqua and through Northampton County. So folks, I think getting past that, you know, it's really difficult to put trails in adjacent to active rail lines. And most times we're successful putting in trails where a rail line has been abandoned. Either they've taken the you know, rails off the bed and simply banked it for a future use, or they've abandoned it completely through the PUC. Those projects we love because we can move very quickly. It's when we have projects where the rail is not abandoned, like on the east side, that is adjacent to our property in Catasauqua, that poses the most concern as we continue to work on easements, right-of-ways, and potential land acquisition between the county and Norfolk Southern. We believe that from Ray Street south to Hanover Canal, that right-of-way's all been complete. So rail on the east because it's active. Rail on the west is a concern from Ray Street north because although Norfolk Southern has removed its rails, they have not officially abandoned that property from future usage. Therefore, we're waiting on decisions from Norfolk Southern on a potential business opportunity that they may or may not have to reinstall rail on the west side between Ray Street and Cementon. Keeping in mind, north of Cementon and south of Ray Street, those rail lines have been abandoned through the PUC. So when you ask what is the most difficult, step in the progress, it's always dealing with potential active rail. That is our difficult situation to deal with here in Lehigh County as it relates to both sides of the Lehigh River. Of course, money, but besides money, it's Norfolk Southern.
Related to money,
Lisa?
Yep.
Another question from the chat concerning funding. How much funding has been received for the Lehigh Valley section of the trail so far, and how much more is needed?
Well, between Becca, it depends. The goal, if we have a fully connected transportation, similar to like what we saw that what Becky showed in her concepts, we're looking at a $40 million project, because what we're, on the west side, we would be looking at having, not just a bike path, but also a walking path adjacent to that. It would be, or are you just talking specifically, is this question about the entire gap or just the Northampton Caddy area?
The question just says Lehigh Valley section of the trail.
Okay, well,
can you hear me? This is Christina Tattoo from the morning call.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I was asking specifically about the Lehigh Valley section project.
So if you're talking about the, if completed on both sides, the 14-mile loop, it's upward. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
That could go up to 40 million.
Okay.
But, that is the fully built out concept. And if we go back to the images that, particularly the image that was shown during Becky's presentation, the concept of what it would be like in a very urbanized area. It would be more than just the typical 10-foot towpath that we have elsewhere.
Lisa, I think our question involved also how much has been received so far. So there's a difference between the 40 million to do this the right way and how much we have in hand so far.
I would suggest Lauren Golden can speak to the Northampton North Catasauqua project, and then Rick, if you want to speak to the Catasauqua project, if that's okay.
Sure.
So in terms of construction funding, there are a number of project phases that happen before construction, and I think Rick mentioned a few of them: the planning funding, the acquisition funding, the engineering funding, the permitting funding. But in terms of construction, the Northampton North Catasauqua section, our current cost estimate is roughly 1.3 million, of which we've secured 500,000 from Northampton County, and we have submitted 2 of 3 planned grant applications to make up the difference for that. And I'll let Rick talk about the funding that Lehigh County has received for their Catasauqua project.
Lauren, thank you. Again, can you hear me? I don't know if Lauren or somebody puts me on mute, probably on purpose. But anyway, the reality is from Ray Street south to Hanover, Lehigh County has secured all the funding from engineering, right-of-way, construction inspection, and construction. We were aided in that project by PennDOT doing something that Leslie Richards started, and if Becky's still on the call, she knows that we discussed this extensively at the transportation study, is the Connect program, where we were able to connect in with the Ray Street bridge rehabilitation, where they have afforded us an opportunity to tap into that funding to assist us around the Ray Street bridge. But our 1.3 roughly is secure. We have the funding and we're moving. On the west side of the Lehigh, the area from Ray Street south to Hamilton is tied up with a large grant. That's the Build grant and the Jandal family. I am optimistic that the Jandals will donate that trail to the project, to the D&L Gap Closure Project within the next several years. I believe that will happen. If we do get the grant, the federal grant, it'll be completely completed and donated. If we don't get it, we'll get the land donated, and then it'll be up to us to figure out the construction costs. From Ray Street north on the west side, the County of Lehigh has committed $2.5 million of monies, county money, to procure that land. And then we'll, of course, be searching for partners, DCNR, DCED, PennDOT, others. But we're committed to purchase that land to the tune of $2.5 million. I would also add that PennDOT, again, has helped, and Lauren, who has spoke just briefly, can also tie up the loose ends if I miss something. We have worked extensively with PennDOT to make that connection between the Cementon trailhead, which is on the Lehigh County side, across that Cementon bridge to the Northampton Borough Trail, which is on the Northampton County side. And we've requested a 10-foot pedestrian walkway on that new bridge, which is significant. We're thrilled that PennDOT has elected to work with us because we knew that this was an important connection between the D&L Trail heading north and the D&L Trail heading south. So a lot of money in play, a lot of different projects in play, but we have a plan. Norfolk Southern certainly is a big part of our plan right now.
Just like to add too that the Jandals have actually committed $20 million to the Build grant to the project to secure then an additional $24 million through the Build grant program with the U.S. Department of Transportation. So that would account for $44 million of the project cost in that area if we're successful in that national funding request. So when you start adding up all these different land acquisition and the individual investments by municipalities and the counties and the state and others, what you really see is the fact that there is a broad and deep commitment to getting this done. There is sharing of resources, building of resources, and again, that true commitment that's going to make this work for our region and really be the shining jewel, we think, for the region as a whole, not only with the whole trail, but having the center of our Lehigh Valley connected with this facility as well.
Great. So a question from Lincoln Stewart. Have all of the official trail locations been already determined between Allentown and Northampton? And if so, is there a map available to the public?
Lauren,
Well,
do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So with the exception of, I'll say a few feet of tolerance, I think it was Rick mentioned the railroad infrastructure that runs along the river in this particular section. Running parallel to that is also the former canal infrastructure, and then also roadways. And then layer on top of that all of the bridges. I think there are 9 bridges total that cross the Lehigh in this section. So the available right-of-way to put the trail is actually quite limited. So we do have a pretty good indication of where the trail is going to go, but we don't yet have a map publicly available that outlines all of those pathways because of the acquisition that Rick mentioned. Until we secure, or our partners secure the land, we don't publicize the map.
Pete Payon, did you want to add something to this topic?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you could hear me or if my mic was muted or not.
I can hear you.
Okay, you guys are hearing me now. So I just wanted to add on the last question about the funding. You know, I think Lauren mentioned the $1.3 million. I mentioned in my little snippet, I know we've received towards that $500,000 from Northampton County, for which I'm grateful. I know we had also had, I think it's about $160,000 from a grant from the state. Just to touch on what Rick had mentioned, you know, when we talk about the trail and the gap in the trail, for us in North Caddy, it's also a matter of the access to the trail. And we do have a very nice trailhead that no one can find. If you come into North Caddy and you drive my Main Street, the access way we have is a tiny driveway that's sandwiched between our municipal building and our and a nearby mini mall. So people who drive by it honestly have had very little idea that there's anything there. So in addition to everything we're doing to get the trail project going as far as completing the gap, it's also a matter of actually getting our residents to be able to get to it. And to that end, North Caddy has gone for funding. We received an LSA grant this year. So sometime next year, we're hoping to break ground to basically revamp our entire trailhead so that people driving through North Caddy actually know that there is a trail that they can access, as opposed to just the select few local citizens knowing if I go down this random path, I can access a really wonderful resource. So that's a, you know, our Main Street area is probably going to be torn up for a couple months as part of some storm sewer projects we have, basically reimagining our trailhead. And we're really aiming to tie the trail as a resource with the history of our town. Our trailhead was the quarry for a cement plant. You know, I work in Northampton, which is, if Leroy were on, he'd probably be talking about the Atlas Museum and the history of cement in Northampton. Our municipal lot in North Caddy was at one time the quarry for the Portland cement plant just down the road here, right near Siegfried Station. So we really want to connect that cultural heritage and that historical aspect of our trailhead with the trail and with the surrounding communities. So it really is all about tying our community to the communities around us.
Thank you.
We have a question from Lish Howard on Facebook. I see there were pedestrian bridges noted on one of the maps. Were those bridges included in the cost estimates just discussed?
I think the overall goal is to utilize existing bridge structures through the work with the counties and the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. The Lehigh Valley Transportation Study has a series of bridge projects along the Lehigh River. And as those bridge rehabilitations or bridge replacements occur, there would be enhanced bike and ped facilities on those. So as those projects move forward over the next really several decades, but as we're all aware, there's already construction along there, one bridge at a time, right? You know, those costs will be accounted for in that transportation infrastructure work.
Lisa, this is Rick. Can I also comment?
Yes, of course.
I think when we're talking about pedestrians, we are going to maximize the bridge infrastructure that's across the Lehigh to the best of our abilities, providing ADA accessibility. In the case of the Cementon Bridge, we were fortunate enough to lobby and obtain that 10-foot wide pedestrian walkway, which is unheard of, really. But there are other opportunities, and I think maybe on some of the preliminary D&L gap closure maps, there are listed some pedestrian bridges. Those pedestrian bridges may be the old rail trestle bridges that cross the Lehigh. That would be an opportunity for us. As I mentioned earlier, the acquisition of the land north of Ray Street, we have a budget and a pretty good appraisal for that $2.5 million. And when we get into rail construction, when we get into trail construction and potentially rebuilding those pedestrian trestles, that's an unknown at this time. That is not part of our initial scope of work. We're focusing on land acquisition, and as we get closer to that, we'll begin to explore and evaluate the ability to use the rail trestles as potential pedestrian-only walkways across the Lehigh River, which we all agree would be an outstanding component to this project.
And I think it's safe to say, to add on to that we're focused on making all these connections. But I've been corrected many times that once we connect the trail, we are not done. There's still opportunity to make all sorts of other improvements, connections across the river, trailhead improvements, other amenities. So even though the main number one priority right now is to make this connection north of Allentown up to Northampton on both sides of the river, once we get that connected, we are not done. There are other things that we can do to make this a more valuable resource for everyone. And those are the sort of things that Rick's talking about, and the question about using some of those bridges and those trestles that we will be looking at certainly in the future.
And I know Jason Ruff I think Jason's on the call. Jason, you may know, and I'm sure you do, that the county just became the owners of the Berger property just south of Sladyton in that southern tip of Washington Township. We've demoed that property. We're right now constructing a trailhead with access to the Lehigh River. So to Mike's point, we're never done. We are continuing to look for opportunities to improve the trail access, especially as it relates to the wonder of the Lehigh River. So that continues, and we're hoping to see that trailhead open within months.
I think we
Kelly,
have
are there
just
more
one more
questions?
question. Does that sound good?
One more?
Yep.
Yep.
So this is from Crystal Cherno from Bethlehem. Was wondering about e-bikes and speed limits on trails, and about cyclists not letting people know they're coming up behind them to pass.
Would anyone like to talk about trail etiquette?
Sure, I can talk to that. So can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is Claire Sadler, Deputy Director of D&L, and yes, so we at the D&L obviously work with the D&L Ownership Council, made up of over 30 different municipalities and organizations for managing the trail. And I've had this as a conversation many times on how we can help to increase the education about etiquette, especially in the last few months when there's so many new trail users, but also we are cognizant of the fact that each region of the trail, and even down to each mile in different municipalities, does have different surfaces, limitations, widths. So it is on a case-by-case basis that we work with the landowners and trying to make improvements as we see with the new capacities that we can handle.
Okay. All right, well, I think then if there's no more questions, I'm gonna turn it back to Mike to close us out, if you would.
Yeah, well, thanks everyone for participating tonight and being part of this. I think we heard about some of the engineering challenges from Lauren and Elisa and Rick and the whole crew. We also have financial engineering, which we talked a little bit about, and just even hearing the discussion tonight, in terms of how we're piecing this together monetarily. There's municipal money from boroughs and cities. There's county money from our 2 counties. There's the involvement of the Planning Commission. There's money from the state level that we get from DCNR. And we're looking at other sources at the state level and at the federal level with the build grant. So there's engineering going on a lot of different ways to pull this together. And as I think Elisa noted also, this is one gap through the Lehigh Valley that has 4 sections, but 10 different projects. And each of those 10 projects might have a couple different funding sources. So this is really a big jigsaw puzzle that we're putting together, but we're also being very focused and very impatient in how we're approaching it. Means we're still being very prudent and going through all the proper steps with everyone. But there's a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes, and I want everyone on the call to know about the work that our partners are doing and the staff is doing to pull all this together. I'm an active user of the trail, and I'm one of the first people that want to see this done. And I speak for a lot of people, especially everyone on the call, that we're going to find a way to get this done as soon as possible. And we appreciate all the support of everyone here. We'll make sure you keep getting information about ways that you can help us directly, ways that you can send letters to support for your state legislators, people on the local side, people on the federal side. We need your voice. We need people to hear how important trails are to you. They hear from us all the time. They hear from the staff and the other people that are talking. They need to hear from the public to make sure those scarce resources can go to this public asset. And then everything you can do from following us on social media and commenting, sharing the news, all the things on this Take Action slide are really beneficial. And it's a way that we can make the D&L Trail something, with taxpayer support that, really literally is of, by, and for the people. So thanks for taking part tonight. Look forward to seeing you out there, and I'll see you on the trail.